This year, we've all had to rethink the way we attack zone coverage. Windows that were once open and still do look open are no longer safe to throw into. Some of us have adapted, namely with the run game and the short passing game, or with certain glitchy shot plays that still work, but a lot of us have been left frustrated, wondering how in the world can we even complete a pass? Well, luckily there are still many simple passing concepts that work well in this game. To show you, I'm going to break it down to the fundamentals. In this guide, I'm going to show you how to attack a defense full of 91 zone coverage players with only hot routes. First, we focus on the cover 3. I'm not going to go over the glitches and the shot plays, though they do have their time and place, but not as the backbone of your offense. By restricting ourselves to these core routes, we will learn the subtleties of the cover 3 as well as its popular adjustments. And in no time, we'll become experts in attacking it. So let's get started. Now, for the purposes of demonstration, I'm going to base these plays out of an easy to read 2x2 spread shotgun formation, but you can use these concepts in most of your favorite formations. Okay, so I'm using the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have good quarterback and a lot of good receivers and a good pass catching running back. Now, of course, in Ultimate Team, you're going to have a much more stacked offense, but you see kind of how I'm limited here. And we'll go with 4 verticals just because there's nothing really special there. You know, all those routes are, a bit different than the go route, but they're not too much different. Okay, and we'll go up against the 4-6 normal, and specifically we'll put in the speed package. Okay, so here you have 6 defensive backs, all with 91 zone coverage. Okay, and we'll go with just that standard cover 3. Now, going back to what I was saying with the 2x2 spread formation, this is just, again, an example, but this is best when you find a play that you like with, an interesting route, and then sprinkling these concepts around it to make it that much better. Actually, the whole point of this guide is to learn how we can start making very simple and effective adjustments on the fly so that we have multiple options in every single play we call. Okay, so we'll start with everybody's favorite cover 3 beater. I brought this to my post last year in the Mudhead forums on exactly doing the same thing, except it was a lot easier last year. But very simply, it's putting your wide receiver on an out route and then smart routing him to that first down marker. Now, of course, this works best when you're, at least 6, 7, 8, 9 yards away from it. Otherwise, if you're pretty close to it, you could probably get away with doing a comeback route, though that takes a bit of time to develop. So, not the best thing. But it works out something like this. So that slot defender is going to be preoccupied with that vertical release from the slot receiver there. He's going to kind of bump him, but by the time he gets out to cover the sidelines, Bryant already makes his break on the ball and he catches it on the sidelines. Okay? And then just the way that the cover 3 plays, those outside deep zones from the cornerbacks, even if they're pressed, they're not even able to really get involved there. So again, you can throw that all day. Okay, so to beginner, to average, to even decent players, a lot of them might stay in that curl flat the whole time, and they won't know how to stop that, and they'll have to, check to a different defense. Okay, and this is great in the 2-minute drill because, again, you can catch that 10 yards, which is a significant amount. So if you start at the 25-yard line, that's a decent chunk of where you got to go. And then from there, you just step out of bounds, stop the clock, or, if you're outside of the 2-minute drill, if you're so inclined, there are ways that you could round that cornerback and get some more yards. Now, what isn't so great about this is that if you're coming up against much better players online head-to-head, most of them, every single play call, they're going to shade down, shade up to get those slot defenders in cloud flat zones. Now, what's good about these is that, despite it not, even spending a second covering the slot receiver, it goes right kind of drifts underneath that outbreaking route. Yeah, so it works something like this. So there's no possible way you can get that in there unless you get really lucky like I just did. Okay, so they're gonna just drift right underneath, and most likely make that interception. Okay. Now we could try to throw this James route really quickly. So that's can be an option. So, but what's tough about it, and even there I was, using this linebacker not doing anything. But even though this slot defender, even though he gets out of the way, which is totally kind of absurd, like in real football, he kind of has to do something to him. He's got to jam him, guard him for like a second or so before going out. But it doesn't really matter because this middle linebacker here, the free safety and the cornerback are going to be there to make the play. Okay, so if you have a really good tight end there, a really good slot receiver, and you can possession catch in time, you could probably squeeze that ball in, but it's not going to be something you can do over and over again. Okay, so if you see cloud flats, which again is really easy to see, so if they don't jam that receiver, it's a cloud flat. Okay, and you don't want to throw this ball, okay, because you're not going to complete it. But if they do jam that slot receiver, you got a curl flat, and you can throw that. Okay? Now, in some cases, that corner actually can make the play. I think if you throw it too early or too late. Yeah, if you wait just a split second after, you'll get, miles of space to catch that ball. Okay? Now, I will say, for the cloud flats, if you notice your opponent baselining, bringing that outside linebacker right close to that middle linebacker, well, despite how fast these defenders move laterally, he won't be able to make that, especially if you're going to the far side of the field. Okay, so something like that. And you get your easy 10, 11, 12 yards. Now, I will say with hard flats, if there is no threat to the immediate flats, he will still be able to drop underneath and make a play on that out route. Okay, so if you expect your opponent to possibly be giving you a hard flat, I'd run it to the side where you have 3 receivers. Okay, something like that. So that slot defender now is gonna kind of break on Bell, even if it's not so aggressively. It gives us, just enough space to throw the ball above him. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, if you want to work in this out route to somebody that might be mixing up the coverage a little, sometimes running curl flats, sometimes running cloud flats, it is probably best to bring in a trips receiver. Okay, so you can either motion your halfback down, bring in a receiver from the other side, or, just come out in a trips formation. So what's going to happen here is you're going to get this, out curl in hot route combination, and if you see that curl flat, you throw that out route every time. Okay, if you see that slot defender break out, you will be able to throw that 10-yard curl right there. Okay, let me get off this middle linebacker. So the middle linebacker is going to get occupied by Bell here on that in route. The slot defender is going to go out and cover that out route, and Smith-Schuster here is going to be open for, pretty easy 13-yard gain, I'd say there. So that's definitely a game you can play there. I think this works more effectively towards the boundary here. That's why I chose this side. Though I think it can be effective to the other side. But what you want to make sure you're doing, I'd say this is the safest to run to the side where the user isn't. Okay, so if you see cover 3, they're going to be one of these 2 defenders. And if you have the identified chemistry in Madden Ultimate Team, this makes this a lot easier. Okay, so if they tend to use a Brown here, you're going to want to run this to the left side. If they tend to use a Fuller here, you want to run it to the right side. Okay, now that's not to say that it can't work if he's on that side. Okay, so let's get this going again. If you have a user that tends to be aggressive on these short inside breaking routes, okay, so we'll go with the cloud flat again. You might even have more room here to throw it to Schuster. Okay, you can get 15, even more yards there. So that's definitely a judgment call to make on your end. Okay, so it's not going to be the same every single game. Again, the safest throw is away from the user, but if you want to start mixing it to his side, kind of testing him, that's definitely something you can do. Okay, and again, also, just one final note I want to make on that is that you can be patient. So if he kind of drifts here, well, you can take that bell inside and get your yards there. Okay, so yeah, I think this route combination is great. I mean, ideally you would just run this one with the 2 wide receivers and you can get 10 yards every time, but you know, if your opponent's a little bit smarter, you're gonna have to use that third receiver. But you know, you got options against the cloud flat, the curl flat, hard flat. You got options against cloud flat in baseline. I didn't go over seam flats, but those, I mean, you'll come up across those very rarely, and if you do, they're gonna carry that seam, you know, right up the field, and you'll get the same thing as that. You know, I'll even show you. Just, you don't have to take my word for it. Okay, seam flat. You have even more room there. Okay, so that's the first concept. We'll go to the second, which is the curl zig dig combination. So it's something like this. So if you see a lot of cloud flats pretty much every time and you want to mix up that other concept, this one's the way to go. I think this year I started mixing in a lot more of these 10-yard ins rather than 10-yard outs. And then I'll have some slot receiver running a short outbreaking route just to occupy that cloud flat or that curl flat. So what happens is, so against curl flats, you're gonna run this zig every time. I don't see these run a lot in online. I don't know why, because they can be really effective, as you'll see here. So you see, you should get 10 yards every single time, and then if your opponent's not expecting it, you know, you can make that quick juke move or that quick spin move, make a miss, and get, you know, an extra 5 or 10 or more yards. Okay, so we would do that against the curl flat because that curl flat, like I was saying earlier, is preoccupied with that slot receiver, and that zig, especially if this was Antonio Brown running the zig, it's gonna be even better. But even somebody half decent at route running is gonna burn him. Okay, and you're gonna do a kind of, not so much an outside pass lead, more of a kind of a forward pass lead. So that gives him, you know, a way to kind of run onto the ball and get some momentum into that catch. Okay, now we will run against cloud flats. So that cloud flat will drift outside, but he won't be able to cover that in route as he breaks inside. Okay, the reason why we have the curl route from Bell is just to occupy that middle linebacker. Okay, so if he's not there, he's going to drift underneath that dig route and, you know, make it a lot tougher on us. Okay, so we'll see how it works against cloud flat. So, you know, it's up to you. You can possession catch it there, or you can just catch it and run for an extra, you know, 2 to 5 yards. But it's consistent. Okay, you see that slot defender drift. The middle linebacker kind of bites on that halfback, and you got a ton of room over top. Okay. Now, again, this one is more effective running it to the non-user side. But, you know, if you're a little bit more confident and say you know that most users don't really key on this halfback, they're going to kind of look for work and look for this, and that halfback's going to be open. Or if they're really aggressive and they start seeing that, you know, you could try to run a you probably wouldn't bullet throw this. You could do maybe a high pass or something like that, especially in the red zone. But you know, it's a risky game to play. You know, it can be beneficial, but you know, it's totally up to you. You can see how things are going. If you don't respect the user, I definitely mix that up in there. Okay, so that's kind of two concepts right there that work great against any flat routes out of the cover 3. So whether it's, again, curl flat, cloud flat, hard flat, this will be effective. You know, it's essentially, yeah, I wouldn't say they're the same type of concept, but you're really exploiting those flat routes because, you know, the inside guys are a bit trickier because they are user defender. They're a bit kind of sporadic. Even, you know, the hook curl is still something that a lot of people are trying to figure out the rules to. I think these flat zones are a lot easier. You know that, okay, the hard flat's going to take down, the cloud flat's going to drift. But the hook curls are still kind of something we don't know about. And I will say, depending on the shade, if you shade down or up or out or inside, they will do drastically different things. Okay, so they're not static every single time. Anyway, so I want to go to the last concept before we wrap this up. I think these ones are really effective just because they take, you know, only 2 receivers and they're really quick. So, you know, if you're coming up against somebody that blitzes a lot, or if you need a quick first down, this will be really great for you. Okay, so the first one I want to go over is the most basic one. It's the curl flat concept. Probably the most basic concept in all of football, yet nobody ever uses it online. So it's the reason why is a lot of times it isn't great, just because if I do something like this, so a flat from James and I have Martavis Bryant on the curl route, you know, 90% of the time that slot defender is going to be a curl flat or a cloud flat, and then they're just going to drift underneath that. Yeah, okay. I think I had him on a hard flat there. It's going to drift underneath, and you're going to have no choice but to throw that. Which, you know, can get you 3 or 4 yards. But, you know, ideally we want to pick up 10 yards or more. Now, saying that, if you have 3rd and inches, 4th and inches, and you want to pick up that first down for sure, and, you know, they can bring something like a hard flat, well, that's where it could definitely become effective. Okay? So, simple stuff. And especially if, you know, if you have 3 receivers to this one side, and your user defender starts to kind of key more over there, it's always good to mix in some concepts over on the other side. Okay. Now, if you want to make the curl flat even better, I will introduce the running back here. So I would put, again, the wide receiver on the curl, but I would put the running back on the flat, because what'll happen is you can actually get him with some speed, and then you can start making defenders miss. Okay? And same thing as I showed you on the other side, if they start to kind of get frustrated with you throwing to your star running back a lot, you might do a hard flat, and then the curl opens up above him. Okay? Doesn't get any simpler than that. 2 routes, 1 read. And both options are pretty good. Okay, so let's go back over here. I want to introduce the similar thing. So it's a flat slant combination. So this one's a hot read. Something you really got to trust, but I will say against any flat defense from that slot defender, it'll work out. You just kind of got to get the timing right. So it'll be something like this. Okay, so that James is going to draw out that flat defender just enough for Bryant to get behind him. Okay, now I should get off this linebacker. Okay. So a lot of the time you'll probably have to possession catch it, but even if you do, I mean, that's 10 yards. Nothing wrong with that. Let's go against cloud flats. The timing is a little bit different, but still effective. I went too early on that one. I went too early again. something like that. So a lot of times you'll have to possession catch it, unless you see the user defender keying towards the trip side, in which case we'll have a lot more room to work with here, and then we can actually catch the ball and run for an extra 5, 10 or more yards. If we want to make this even more effective, we'll bring in a trips receiver on this side. So he's going to occupy that linebacker. And I'll actually just get off of him. So he should occupy that linebacker. James will, make way in that seam, and Bryant will come in. You'll catch that ball. You'll get 15 yards every single time. Okay, and if you have somebody much faster, like Odell Beckham, it's going to be a lot more effective for you. Okay, and we'll even show you against the cloud flat. I love this combination against hot blitz, or even if it's just coverage, it's going to work every single time. You can do it with 2 receivers if you find that that linebacker, that user linebacker, is going to key to the other side, or if you definitely want your room, you bring in that trips receiver, occupy the middle, and you'll have a lot more room there. Look at that. How about that? Okay, if you like this video, if it helped you out, make sure to leave a like. I'm going to drop more videos on this guide. I'm going to do one on cover 4, even though it's very similar to cover 3. And of course, I'm going to do one on cover 2. So make sure you subscribe to be able to see those, and I'll see you in then. Okay?